Entrepreneur MBA podcast purpose is to help existing business owners grow their companies past the $10 million in revenue per year benchmark. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I am co-founder of Financing Solutions. Over the last 25 years, I've built 6 companies in the $5 million to $25 million range. And I can't tell you how important it is for businesses to have a line of credit so they can make an investment in their business, or even for unexpected emergencies. Our line of credit program is easy to get in place, inexpensive when used, and costs nothing to set up, making it a great cash backup plan that every entrepreneur should have. If you'd like to learn more about our line of credit program, please visit us at fscreditline.com. Again, that's FS as in Financing Solutions, creditline.com, or give us a call at 862-207-4118. If you apply today, we will even give you a $250 credit on file that you can use when you are using your line. Just a reminder that the best time to set up a line of credit is when you don't need it, so that when you do need it, it is ready to go. Today, I'm very excited to be speaking with Robert Kennedy from Kennetik Kommunications. Robert Kennedy III, or also known as RK3, didn't know he liked to speak. Yet he always found himself in a position to do so. At church, at school, being a teacher, with music groups, and in business, he always loved to talk, and he also always loved technology. He once took apart a radio just to see if he could put it back together. He got it back together, but it was never the same. But luckily, he was only 11 years old at the time. The technology, the speaking, and even the radio came together eventually, as his background includes times as a news anchor, a classroom teacher, and a technology trainer. Now he works with business leaders who need to connect with their teams, especially on video. He shows them how to connect using storytelling as a tool. When he's not doing storytelling work, he's probably dabbling with something in his home studio or hitting a ball of some sort. Robert, welcome to today's Entrepreneur MBA podcast.
So glad to be here, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
So today's topic is how storytelling helps business owners communicate. And from your experience, have you seen that typically very, very good business owners are great storytellers?
The majority are not. You do have a few that are automatically, or just maybe they've grown up that way, or they just are naturally great communicators. You have some people who do have an inkling for that, who have a leaning towards just being able to connect with people. They're charismatic. They are able to reach people really easily. But the majority of business owners, a lot of times we feel like the way to convince people or the way to share information is through a lot of statistics and data. And so we chuck that stuff at people. Our presentations are chock full of data and charts and bar graphs and scatter plots and a lot of bullet points. And so there's a lot of information overwhelm in businesses. And, the majority of business owners that I come across really could use some help with communicating and connecting more effectively.
Well, why do you find that storytelling is so important, and why is it a great way to communicate?
Well, it's the way that we've communicated for years. If we go back to the beginning of time, I mean, before we knew how to write, before hieroglyphics was a thing, right? Before we had papyrus, before we had anything, how did we share information? We shared information orally, and we shared it typically through experiences, reminding people about, okay, your grandfather did this, your great grandfather did this. This is why this heirloom or this specific object was passed down to us because of this. And we share things through moments and through stories. And so that's only begun to change the more that we have come into the technological space, because we are stuck on systems and processes and data. And so we feel that's how we have to translate the information, when in actuality, people really lean in more when you tell them a story rather than just sharing statistics and percentages.
So, what do you think makes a storyteller? I mean,
Mhm.
what is the format of a story?
Yeah. Well, I love that. I teach four main areas when I speak about storytelling to organizations. I teach that stories mainly have four areas. The first area is what I refer to as context. And really, you are setting, you're giving the setting, you're giving the level set, you're telling what the current experience and situation is. I remember when I was a kid, my mom used to watch this show called Golden Girls. You remember that show, man? I don't know
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
remember this
yeah,
show.
yeah.
Yeah. So there were these four ladies in the house, and one of them, the oldest one, she was kind of the youngest actress, by the way, but she was the oldest one in the show. Sophia Estelle Getty. She would always tell these stories, and she started them out the same way every time. Picture it, Sicily, 1933. Right? So what she was doing was putting you in that space. She was telling you, hey, this is where it happened. This is when it happened. And then she was doing this brain hack, right? She was literally taking control of your mind for a moment, because she was telling you, picture it. So when somebody says picture it, what do you begin to do? You begin to start to think about that. You begin to create an image in your mind. A video starts to play in your mind. And so she is really pulling everybody into that same space where she is. So that's the first piece of storytelling, context. And then the second piece of storytelling is characters. You got to have characters, right? You got to have things or people or beings that your audience can relate to, right? If you're just telling them information about numbers, they don't always relate to that, because they don't always put themselves, or they don't know how it's experienced by human beings, right? And so we've got context, we've got characters, so that's two C's. The third C is conflict. What's broken? What's happening? What is an opportunity that is existing? I mean, if you think about a movie, so there's this movie where a man and a woman, they thought that it would be good to send their child on a trip, and so they packed their child in a spaceship and sent that child to another planet, landed on that planet, and he got found in this field by a man and a woman. They found the child, and they clothed him, and they sent him to high school, and then they sent him to college. Then after that, he went to work at a newspaper. He met this other reporter. Her name was Lois. They fell in love, they got married, and lived happily ever after.
Hmm.
Yeah, I want my money back. I mean, right? What's the deal? What am I listening for in that story? So we need the villain. We need the broken stuff. We need to know what the challenge, what the obstacle, what the problem is, because that's just how life is. We have obstacles and challenges and problems. And if you're going to put information in front of me and show me that you don't understand my problem or my challenge, then I'm not as likely to listen.
Yeah,
So
that was very articulate the way you explained that. That was a good job. Yeah, I
I
like that.
appreciate you.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the
So
fourth C?
the fourth C is conclusion. So context, characters, conflict, and then conclusion. And conclusion is the solution for the problem. That's the thing. If you're a business owner, that's your product, your process, your program, your project, your solution. Right? That's the detail of things. How many times have you been to a networking event and somebody comes up to you, and the question that most people ask is, hey, what do you do? Somebody says, hey, this is what I do. I sell computers. I'm an IT service, blah 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 blah. And they say all this stuff, they jam their card into your hand, and then they leave, and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah,
I, I mean, you have no idea who I am, what I
yeah.
need. I was sitting in my living room. I lived in Massachusetts for a while. I told you that before the show. And my doorbell rang, and I go to the door, and there's this dude outside in the driveway, and he's got this display board. And on the display board were these little squares, these little swatches. And I go outside, and he says, hey, my name's Tim, and I'm selling carpet in the neighborhood. I've got all these different types of carpet. You should come out and feel it. I've got Berber. I've got the Austin Powers shag. I've got these, and he named like 5 different types, and I touched them, and he said, "Yeah, which one of these interests you?" And then I opened my door and showed him my house, which had hardwood.
Mm.
Right? So I'm like, dude, you came at me with the conclusion. You came at me with the product, with the solution, but you didn't even know if that solution would solve my problems. You had no idea what my needs were or what I was even interested in. And too often we do that as business owners. A lot of times we do it as people. We come talking at people and we don't know what they need, what their challenges are, what they believe in, what they stand for, and what they're struggling with. So we if we utilize the storytelling format and include that conflict area, and we got to think about it from that perspective, that really helps us to connect with people even more closely.
Yeah, I'm a good storyteller, right?
Yes.
But I never brought I never took and broke it down
Hmm.
as to why I was a good storyteller. Probably, it's like playing a sport, right? Or playing an instrument. Well, maybe a sport is a better, because I think, my philosophy a lot of times about sport is, you know, do it, and then you can start breaking it down into the little parts.
Hmm.
Because unless you start doing something, then you really can't analyze it later. It's much I think it's much harder to say, okay, there's 4 parts, there's 4 C's. Um, I don't know how to storytell, so now I'm going to start right in the beginning, and
Yeah.
it, it you know people do say in sports it's better to do it that way, because then you don't pick up bad habits,
Right.
right? But I've never known any sport I've ever played to be where, okay, you know, let me analyze the entire baseball swing before I go and I decide how I'm going to hit the ball.
Right. Well, we don't necessarily do it that way intentionally every single time, but we do the analytics. I'll use another example. When my daughter just went to college, and about a year and a half ago, she took her driver's test. Now, when she first started to drive, as she had her dad as her teacher, she would get in the car and she would go through a sequence of things. Okay, let me look in this rear view mirror, let me look in that rear view mirror, side mirrors, let me fix this, let me make sure there's nothing around me, let me back out, and then let me think about how how much pressure I have to apply to the accelerator to get the car going. After she gets her permit and we go through this and she gets her license, man, she's like a bat out of you know where going down the out of the cul-de-sac here, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, why is she going so? But she's become more confident in this because she's now accelerated the sequence in her mind of the steps that she needs to take, right? And it's the same thing. If I play baseball when I'm a kid and somebody puts the bat in my hand or a wiffle ball bat in my hand and I swing, I'm probably just hacking at it like I'm chopping a tree with an axe,
Yeah.
right? But somebody says to me, okay, hey, Stephen, hey, Robert, try swinging this way. Put your elbow up, do this, and try to swing this way. And so the first couple of times that you do it, you're like, okay, elbow up, and you're mentally thinking through that process. After you play a few games, you're not thinking elbow up, swing, et cetera anymore. You're just reacting, right? And storytelling is the same way, right? We don't remember somebody in our lives saying, "Okay, dude, you got to include the context, you got to include the character, you got to include the conflict." But you were probably around great communicators. You were probably around great storytellers in your life, and you listened to and heard how they connected, right? You heard what they did, and not only did you hear what they did, you saw how people around them responded when they spoke. And so now subconsciously you pick that up and you begin to apply those same steps to how you communicate. The inverse or the converse is true for others as well. If you're around people as children that may not be strong communicators, for example, if you're a child and you're around family that like they just yell all the time, chances are the way that you communicate when you get a little bit older is going to be quite loud, right? And so yeah, the steps are there, they're in there. And if we become more intentional about breaking them down, we can become better at them and we can enhance them, but they're there nonetheless because as I said right at the beginning of this, as human beings, storytelling is what we do. That's like the most natural form of communication and the most connected form of communication for us.
So right now you're a business coach. Is that correct?
No, we run a training company. We teach business leaders how to communicate and connect effectively.
Okay. And so you put people in a group. You
Mhm.
do that via Zoom now, or do you do that via to get being together?
Well, more so in the virtual space now than before. Yeah, up to 2020, I would say the majority of what we did was in-person training.
Yeah. How long is a training typically?
It can be an entire day. It can be 2 days. It really depends on what people want. For the virtual trainings, we typically don't do a full day at once. It may be 2.5 hours, 3 hours over the course of a couple of days. So we'll do 2.5 today, 2.5 tomorrow, something of that nature. So it varies depending on the medium that it's being delivered in.
Now, the people who come to your courses,
Mhm.
what is typically the reason why that you see most often?
Well, a lot of times they feel like they're delivering information, but people either are not moving, there's not a lot of action taking place, or they feel like there's some confusion. They A lot of times when we communicate and we're not communicating effectively, we feel it. We don't exactly know what's wrong, but we see the responses on people's faces, or we see that, man, I said this, but nobody did it. Nobody moved to action on it. Another word that happens, or another term that we deal with, is the term influence, right? I'm in a meeting and I speak and everybody nods, but somebody else speaks and they say similar or the same thing that I say, and everybody's face just lights up. What's the difference there? Why did nobody listen to me? Why did my words fall flat while the other person's words light everybody up? What was it? What was the difference? And quite often that difference is not just storytelling, but how I deliver something. There's a charismatic, there's an energetic, there's an executive presence difference in how I deliver certain pieces of information. But it starts out with everybody, the deliverer, making everybody feel like they can own the idea. They can be a part of it, instead of me just giving you a command or a directive.
Now, if you had to say not correlation is not the right word. If you had to say the people who typically come to your training, like, are they more introverts than extroverts that come? Uh, my guess would be just 60% are introverts and 40%
Mhm,
are extroverts. That would be my guess. Because you have the opposite problem with extroverts where they're talking too much
mhm,
and people aren't listening. And then you have the introverts who maybe don't know how to communicate uh,
mhm.
because they're a little scared. Um,
Right.
is there a correlation? And it doesn't have to be introvert, extrovert. Is there a commonality that you see in the people who typically are trying to get training to improve their communication skills?
Well, as far as personality styles or personality traits, I don't know that I've quantified the groups of people. I mean, I do sense that we don't always have a full understanding of who we are and what we do as it relates to communication and even how we operate personally. So, for example, if we're talking about introverts, so sometimes that we'll get people that say, um, I don't like to do this because I'm an introvert, or I get nervous about this because I'm an introvert or because I'm shy. And the truth is that introversion is not necessarily a shyness or that I don't like people or I don't like to talk. It's just about how energy flows. So for example, Robert Kennedy III has always been identified by Myers-Briggs as an introvert. When I share that, most people don't believe me for some reason or not, right? And the reason that they don't believe me is they say, well, dude, you're in front of people all the time. You're a teacher, you're a speaker, you're a trainer, you're always in front of people. How on earth could you be an introvert? And I'm like, yeah, when I'm done with all of this peopling, when I'm done with all this speaking, I'm drained. My energy is drained, right? It's like people peopling drains energy from me. My wife is the opposite of me. She's an extrovert and she gets lit up. She when people are around, she gets energized. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I need more people." When we go to the amusement park, she literally wants to stay until the place is shut down. If it closes 11, she's like, "Listen, we're not leaving till 10:59:59." Right? And Robert is like, "Okay, after a couple of hours of doing all of that, I'm okay. Can we start thinking about what we're going to pack up and when we're going to leave?" Because that's how the energy works for me, right? So once people understand a little bit more about who they are and then what result they want, okay, so it's okay, if I want this result, if I want to influence people, if I want people to move to action in a certain way, then how do I show up for that moment? What tools do I need in order to be the best or to achieve the best result in that situation? And communication and storytelling is just one of those tools that we share with people. And we're like, listen, it doesn't depend on your personality. It depends on you deciding the result that you want and then choosing which tools you need to use to achieve that result.
Yeah, I guess the common denominator could be, if you're in a role. No, well, if you're in a role where communication is really important
Hmm.
to your job or your success, then that looking at how you communicate, whether you're good or just okay at it,
Hmm.
if it's a pretty smart decision to work on that part of it. Because having you say what you said, if someone's in a very important communication role, they're a leader of a company, they're a leader in their organization, they're a manager, they're constantly giving speeches,
Yeah,
they're giving feedback, all those other things, and they're doing a lot of communication. Then understanding how you communicate now, um, it could really, really help your career. Uh,
absolutely.
yeah, like
Absolutely. Warren Buffett, for those people that don't know the name, she's probably slipped down the list now, but top 5 richest man
right,
in the world,
right,
right? Warren Buffett states and says, you can look it up online, the best decision that he made for his career was deciding to take a Dale Carnegie public speaking course
yeah,
when he was younger. He actually was given the opportunity to take it, and they said, you can take it and it costs $100. He's like, nah, I don't want to pay $100. And he didn't take it the first time.
yeah,
Then the next time he started it, but he gave up on it. He didn't finish it. And then finally he was in his career and he saw how certain people were getting opportunities, how certain people were connecting and how they were moving up or they were influencing. And he said, wait a minute. I need to do this. And so he just, he wrote the check and he took the course and he was speaking to some college students several years ago and said, listen, if you do this one thing will more than triple your value to any organization that you are a part of. It's going to change the amount of money that you can generate and the income that you can generate,
Yeah.
simply because you invest in the art of communicating even more effectively. And communicating is not just, okay, can I talk without saying or ah? It's not just, can I talk without using filler words, or is my vocabulary large enough? It's about, how do I relate to people? How do I make them feel like I understand who they are and what's important to them? And if they feel that way, then influence is the outgrowth of that.
Give me an example of a really amazing transformation that you've seen from somebody, real life example.
Mhm.
Somebody that you could think of, picture them in your head right now, someone that you kind of saw, they came in, you could describe them to us,
Yeah.
and then tell us the outcome of the end result.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different stories. I think one that sticks out for me was, I have this group online called the Storytellers Growth Lab. And there was a lady that came to the group and was involved in a couple of our sessions. And she is a therapist, and she went to school, she got her doctorate, et cetera, et cetera. And we were going through how to be confident on camera, how to communicate live for your business. And she was in the room. And this was virtual. She was in the Zoom sessions, and she came to several of them. And she didn't want to talk. She didn't want to talk. And when we said why, and we were processing it, she said, "Well, I'm scared of, the criticism. I'm scared I'm going to mess up. I'm scared that I'm going to come across as a babbling idiot, and people are going to laugh at me and not take me seriously." And we had some sessions where what we did was, we said, "Okay, we're not asking you to come up in front of us and go live, but we're asking people to create these videos so that you can watch it, so that we can talk through it and you can get some feedback on it." And she didn't want to do that. But finally, she did one, and she went through it. And so we did several of these sessions, and I noticed that she kept coming. She kept showing up. First few, she didn't want to talk that much, but she kept coming. She kept showing up. And by the time we reached about the fourth challenge, she was there and she started to make a few videos. And then I remember, about 5 or 6 months after one of the challenge, I was online doing something, and I saw her online. And I was like, whoa, who's this person? Because her entire aura had changed. Her entire confidence had changed. And what she was online doing was, she was promoting a book that she had just written. Uh, and so I'm like, okay, there's this person that didn't really want to share, but now they've written the book. They're online talking about this book with confidence. They're going forward. And so, she had sales from the book. She began to invite people into her own coaching course that she developed. And these things came as a result of her taking on the challenge for herself, that, listen, I'm going to learn how to communicate more effectively. I'm going to learn some frameworks, including the storytelling framework that Robert was sharing, that will help me to be more confident online and live or on video. And those are some of the basic things. I mean, there are stories that I can share about people who have gotten jobs because of some of the training that we've gone through. Sales training. A lady came to me one time and she said, "My goodness, I've got this job, that interview that's coming up, and it's 3 stages, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it, because they want me to do the interview, but then they want me to do a mock sales presentation as a part of the interview, and I'm totally not ready. I don't know. I've never done this before. I don't know how to do it, and I'm freaked out. I'm scared." We went through some sessions, we did that, and then she called me a week after our last session and said, "Hey, I just got a call yesterday. They said that was one of the best sales presentations they've seen, and I got the job. They offered me the job." I'm like, whoa, amazing, right? Because it's really just that focus on, how can I communicate more effectively? How can I get out of my own head and step into the space of what somebody else needs and wants? Because we all have needs and wants in our own head. And if somebody can connect with that, we're more likely to listen to them.
Is there a part in your training where you cover when not to speak?
Yes. Yes, we do talk about, especially in conversation, active listening. And I share the story of when I was a kid growing up in New York City. I would look out my window and there would be these girls playing double dutch. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen double dutch being played, but double dutch, there's two ladies or two girls or two people at two sides of a rope, and they're both swinging the ropes, and somebody's prepping to jump in, and they're kind of, doing this back and forth motion while they're waiting their timing. And I said that a lot of us do that with conversation. Somebody's talking and we're not really listening. What we're doing is we're seeking a break. We're trying to find this break where we can put our thoughts in. And so the reason that we do that is that we're uncomfortable with silence. One of the reasons that we use filler words is that we're uncomfortable with silence. Our brain and our mouth are going at two different speeds. And so if one is going faster than the other, and we reach a moment where we feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have something to fill in here, we say, or we say, because the silence, we don't want to leave the moment empty, or empty it seems to us, but it's not really empty because maybe your audience is taking a moment to process what you're saying as well. So that silence is absolutely okay. And as a matter of fact, the silence may even create a greater impact in what you're saying. So listening is huge, and silence is huge.
Let me ask you a technique question, because I'm just curious. I was in a meeting last night, and it's the third meeting I've been with the same group, and there's one woman who's in it who will go on and on and on and on and on. And so, in my mind, and now let me clarify this group. There is no leader in the group. It's a group. And so, what is the technique that you are supposed to use? Like what I try to do is listen, 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 be patient. And then, I could really kind of sense the rest of the group is getting bored with the person who's speaking.
Yeah.
And I look for an opportunity when there is a lull to change the subject to something else. Is that what would be the proper technique?
So let me, before I share a technique, what is there a facilitator at all? Do you agree in the group that there's not necessarily a group leader, but for this meeting, we'll have somebody facilitate the conversation?
There is a facilitator.
Okay.
And she is very good. You can see her technique is similar to what I just explained as well, which she'll look for a way to transition the person. So I will typically only jump in if I can sense that the rest of the group, is getting to a point where they're getting annoyed, and because I've seen people drop out, So, I'm questioning this because I think every one of our listeners have individual questions about things that they've noticed that they don't know what to do with.
Right.
And it comes to either active listening or it comes to speaking or whatever,
Yeah. Well, group dynamics are definitely different. And there's a technique that I use even as an interviewer that I translate over into group dynamics sometimes, especially if I'm a facilitator. So when I'm interviewing someone, and if I find that the interviewee is going on longer than we have time for, or than makes sense for the audience, what I use is a disrupt mechanism sometimes. And so sometimes I'll interrupt without seeming rude. And it's simply the person is talking, and I'll say, hold on, wait a minute. You just said something really interesting. Can you take 30 seconds and go a little bit deeper on that? So I've done a couple of things. I've disrupted what pattern they had going on. I've created a frame for them to speak about something specific. And subconsciously, I've also said, can you take 30 seconds? I've also shared some time blocking in there. So in group dynamics or in a group, sometimes that's a technique that I'll use. And sometimes as a group, we know that we're all there for an hour. We know that we're all there for 45 minutes. I might say, wow, that was a fantastic point. What, just for the sake of time, can you take just 30 more seconds and go over and just give us a wrap up on how you did that specific thing?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
now what you're also doing is you're interrupting, but you're also not, I don't want to say feeding the ego, but you're also congratulating and you're also putting good feelings into the person that you just interrupted, because they know that you found some value in what they said, and you also gave them the cue that, hey, I'm listening to you, I hear you, I haven't tuned out, that you just said something gold, you just said something interesting, and I want to know a little bit more about that. And maybe next time we'll have a chance to share a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I could see where the training that you're doing, the solutions that you just gave,
Mhm.
right? Those are powerful. Because we all think when you say, "Oh, well, I'm taking a class about communication,"
Mhm.
you think it's all about me speaking,
Right.
but it's not. It's about group dynamics. It's about listening. It's about solutions to different types of personalities.
Mhm.
It's not. It's really. It shouldn't even be called how to communicate better. It should really have a different name, shouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, communication is a big area. It's a big area. I mean, I don't have workshops that are just called how to communicate. There we have one called how to create messages that move, right? And so really that is for leaders who want to ensure that when people leave a meeting, they're moved to action, because we find that a lot of times you have a meeting or you have a group session and you have so many bits of information and then you wonder why nothing gets done. Is there a way to create a big idea? Is there a way to create what we call a catalyst that allows people to say, that's the one thing you want me to remember? Okay, here's my action. What's your call to action at the end of that? We've got another one called storify your speech and improve your influence, how to use the storytelling framework to really reach people and connect with people even more effectively. Man, you've got companies called crucial conversations, how to speak when the temperature, or to how to communicate, or how to converse when the temperature is turned way up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I have a good idea for you for a course, but you probably
yeah.
are doing it already. But it's not how to interact in Zoom meetings, or how to have great Zoom meetings. I can.
Yeah.
Do you have
Yeah.
anything like that now or
We
no?
do we do something called how to create great virtual experiences.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it and we started doing that early on in the pandemic, probably around May of last year
Is
or
it well
so.
attended or no?
It's been up and down. Part of that may be due to how we have promoted it or shared it, but I think a lot of people feel like they know what they're doing in Zoom meetings, and some people feel like, man, it's just a virtual meeting. Why do I need to put extra work into it? Right? Because they're like, well, my in-person meetings were going swimmingly. They were smashing. And no, they were not. The difference is that in the in-person meetings, people couldn't turn their camera off. Right? You
Yeah.
can't be in the boardroom and put a bag
Yeah.
over your head and be like, okay, I'm not paying attention now.
Yeah, let me
Right?
tell you something. Anybody who says that their in-person or Zoom meetings were going splendidly
Yeah.
is what's the right word I'm thinking of here? In denial. Try surveying the people in the meeting anonymously, and you'll get a nice little slap in the face
Yeah.
because listen. The other part about this, even if you are,
Yeah.
knowing how to solicit ideas
Yeah.
out of a Zoom meeting, or out of any meeting, uh, that's the real challenge, because a lot of times you'll get your best idea from the person who speaks the least,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the other things is that I love your denial term. What people were in denial of as well is that we were going to be virtual or hybrid for a long time. They
Yeah.
were kind of like, no, this pandemic's going to be done soon and we're going to be back in person. We don't need to learn virtual.
Yeah. Yeah. I listen, if you're running a company now,
Yeah.
um, it's a very interesting topic to me. I think, how do you build a company culture
Mhm.
if you're not having this coffee clutch? I don't know if coffee clutch is a word, but if you're having
You
those,
can make it up.
yeah, conversations, I think that, and Zoom is so structured,
Mhm.
and I'm not running a big company anymore. So I don't have a lot of people working for me anymore. It's a very small staff. And so it's not that type of company anymore where it's so entrepreneurial that new ideas are such a big deal, and
Right.
and it's a big group. But I do know that entrepreneurs underestimate the power of culture.
Mhm.
And in fact, it probably was one of the most important things about your company. And if you can't communicate and have your team embrace culture, which, is a challenge in a Zoom environment, I think that your company's going to struggle,
Yeah. Yeah. It,
so
it's a challenge in a Zoom environment. It's a challenge in any environment.
it's
And it
true.
really calls for being intentional about addressing it, intentional about reminding people about it, and keeping culture and vision and mission front and center, right? Because it's easy to forget. You've got this message, we got the vision, we slap it up on a wall, people walk by the wall, it becomes a part of the background, right? And then and things go awry, and it's a while before people it clicks and they say, "Oh my gosh, the reason why this is going wrong is because we forgot to remind ourselves about the people we serve, the customers that we have committed to, our core values, and what we stand for. We fell off the wagon a little bit, and it's okay. That's human. That's human. We have so many different bits of information, new pieces of software, new applications, new processes, new technologies. All of these things are coming at us all the time, and so something is bound to give. Something's bound to give. So we've got to remind ourselves sometimes, who we are, what we stand for, and get back to what our trunk is, what our foundation is, and what our core is, and move from there.
So I'm going to tell you a story, and I had no. This is the first time that I've ever told this on air.
It's 9:53
Mhm.
a.m.
Excuse me, and my wife recently passed away unexpectedly, and
Wow.
and
So sorry.
thank you, and my 21-year-old son, who's up in Boston. I'm in New Jersey. He's at college. He made the suggestion. He goes, because the way I communicated with my son was a lot different than my way my wife did,
Mhm.
where she would talk to him every day. They would text all the time, and about once a week, I would get on the phone with Mike and just get caught up. And then in between that, I would hear from my wife what was going on,
Mhm.
And so when my wife passed away, my son said, "Hey, Dad, why don't we have a Zoom meeting over lunch every Tuesdays and Thursdays?"
Right.
And so we get our lunch, and we sit there and we eat our lunch together, and we just kind of catch up,
Yeah.
right? It's been fantastic. It's been fantastic. And the reason being is things come up in that conversation that's not scheduled,
Yeah.
versus a meeting where you say, okay, well, we're going to have a meeting on Monday at 9 o'clock to go over the results of the prior quarter.
Mhm.
There's no um, going beyond that in many regards. And then there's also a time element, which,
Mhm.
which is fine. But So, I think that people need to include that type of unstructured
Hmm.
communication in their new Zoom virtual. Because I agree with you, this isn't going away. People like it too much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've done sessions last year, this year, where we've had hundreds of people in the room. And instead of just saying, hey, I'm going to give you a speech, we set aside some moments to send people into breakout rooms just to get to know each other.
Mm,
Right. We had
that's
this
great.
one activity we did where I took 2 minutes, we played music, we danced for a few moments. And then I said, hey, I'm going to send you guys into groups of about 5 in breakout rooms. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to find an item in your house that is meaningful to you and come back and take about 30 seconds to share with your group why that's meaningful to you. And I said, the only rule that I'm going to set here is that it cannot be something within arm's reach. You actually have to get up out of your seat to go get something.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was fun because now you're on the Zoom meeting and there's this kinesthetic piece to it. Now you've got to move. Right. Yeah. You got to get up out your seat. And then now you're intentionally searching around your house for something that, okay, I'm thinking about that. And as you're going through your house, you're thinking about things and you're literally accessing memories. You're accessing experiences. And so as you prioritize these experiences, now you come back and you say, hey, I found this apple, or hey, I found this sweater. And this is meaningful to me because blah, blah, blah. And there were some great stories that came out of that. And when people come back every time, they're like, dude, that wasn't enough time. We were so enjoying getting to know each other because we don't do that on a regular basis at work. I didn't know that Stephen had somebody in his family that passed away recently. I didn't know that Stephen had a son at college. I didn't know that this person liked Count Chocula
Yeah.
or whatever. So
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
really important to
you
do
really
that.
bring up a good point, and that is the thing that makes a company interesting or makes people enjoy working there
Mhm.
are all those stories that are not related to work. What
Yeah.
makes a job boring is when you're just doing your job and there's no understanding of the people who are around you,
Yeah.
right? And um, that's how people move around their jobs a lot. You're talking about having turnover. It's because
Mhm.
people will have no emotional attachment to the
Yeah.
company anymore.
Mhm.
You know, so I really like what you're saying. Robert, when we picked the topic to talk about today, I didn't expect it to go in the direction that we went today.
Yeah.
It was a very and you're a great storyteller.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, what made me stuck in my mind is the thing you said about Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
Was that he said it was the best course that he had ever taken. My best course that I ever took was not a course, but I actually took Dale Carnegie's management course, which
Mhm.
I thought was very, very good because I really needed help. I was not a good manager when I first started. But the book that I read, which was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, by far
Yeah.
was the best business book I've ever read. And even the way he titled that, if he had titled it How to Influence People,
Yeah.
the fact that he communicated it differently, how to win friends and influence people, I think changes the whole structure of the book,
Yeah.
you know. And so I think the fact that you're telling us about the other courses that you offer um, are powerful ways for us to improve as business leaders and as leaders of other organizations as well. So I thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This has been fantastic.
So I'd like to thank so very much Robert Kennedy from Kennetik Communications for coming on today's podcast. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your business, you can call us at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at fscreditline.com. Again, that's FS as in Financing Solutions, creditline.com. Robert, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
I make it easy to find me. I'm Robert Kennedy 3 on all social media. And my main website, my speaker website is robertkennedy3.com. And you can also find our company at kinetickommunications.com. And
Kinetic Communications, this for everybody, is KENNETIKKOMMUNICATIONS. So that's a K.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
And so Robert, thanks for coming on today.
I appreciate you, Stephen. Thank you.
For our listeners, and if you're interested in getting any new business ideas, I tweet daily at S Halasnik, which is my name, S Halasnik, SHALASNIK. And also, I just want to thank everyone out there for listening. You guys are all out there working hard, but please take some time out of your day and make sure that you're getting better at what you do. Everybody, see you later.